on what you're seeing here, one of the really cool things that we can do is actually take MRI scans of the heart itself. It turns out that you can do functional MRI of the heart. There are a group of radiologists who are now interested in the development of non-invasive methods for probing cardiac function that will eventually eliminate cardiac angiography, and it's done through the use of real-time MRI. And so what you're seeing here is an image of cardiac-gated MRI, where we gate the MRI scanner. We record the electrocardiogram in the scanner, and we gate the acquisitions to the onset of the main ventricular contraction that we can detect with the EKG recording. And this is a slice through the left ventricle. And you can compute various parameters of cardiac function in this way. And it provides some really cool information. And I'll just show you a little bit of this. This is from a new paper. Antoine Lutz is a scientist in our center, and if you just look at heart rate, there are a lot of other measures that we can derive, but if you just look at heart rate, it turns out that during the generation of compassion among the long-term practitioners, you actually see an elevation of heart rate during the practice itself compared to the novice practitioners. And what's really interesting is this part of the brain called the insula that I mentioned earlier is strongly coupled to the cardiac change in the long-term practitioners and not in the novices. It appears that this region of the brain is sensitive to and driving, we think, the cardiac change. And so this is a parameter of coupling that is on the ordinate here, and it just shows you that during compassion, but not during the neutral period, there's much stronger coupling in the expert practitioners in red compared to the novices in blue. It suggests indeed that there's something about neurocardiac coupling during compassion which we think is very important. Participants were asked to contemplate and to visualize the suffering and then wishing the freedom from suffering for a number of different classes of people. First, a loved one. To visualize this and visualize suffering that they may have encountered, and then wish that they be free from that suffering. In addition to a loved one, they also direct this meditation to themselves. In addition, we have them directed to a stranger. This is someone that they actually see on a regular basis. It might be a bus driver. It might be a cashier. It might be a janitor, someone they see on a regular basis, but whose life they really don't know much about. And they're asked to do the same thing for them, to visualize whatever suffering they think they may be having, and then the freedom from that suffering. Then a person is asked to visualize and contemplate a difficult person, someone who pushes your buttons. And then engage in that same process for that person. And finally, directing this to all beings. Participants use mental phrases that are silently repeated. The phrase most often used was, "May you be free from suffering. May you experience joy and ease." They're instructed to notice visceral sensations, especially around the area of the heart, as they engage in this practice. And finally, they are instructed to feel the compassion emotionally and not simply to repeat the phrases cognitively. We told them at the end of the study that we were going to offer them the opportunity to donate some amount of money that they were receiving to any charitable cause of their choosing. And they were offered the opportunity to donate any amount of money from the funds that they were being given to any charitable cause. And this was, again, for real. There was no deception. They actually executed the transaction online and did it in private, so there was no one looking over their shoulder. Now, there was no difference between the compassion group and the comparison group. and how much money was redistributed. So 2 weeks of compassion training is insufficient to produce any change in this donation task. It was probably naive for us to think that we could produce a change after 2 weeks. However, we did find something interesting. And that is, when we looked at the brain data, it turns out that among people in the compassion group, those who showed more activation in an area of the brain that's been implicated in positive emotion were the ones who donated more money. So the greater the activation change, that is, the more increase there was in activation in this region as a consequence of the 2 weeks of compassion training, the more money was donated by the participants in the compassion group. The participants in the reappraisal group showed no significant relation between activation in this region and donations. So what these data suggest is that people respond to this compassion training in a very variable way, which is not surprising to us. And those who respond the most, who are showing the biggest boost in activation in this brain region, are the ones who show the largest increase, the largest amount of donation on this donation task.